After getting the doctor's permission, I tilted the already opened envelope. From the inside came a small folded letter and a small key with a number plate attached. Then a magnetic card slid out. A112 was engraved on the key's number plate. I didn't know what it meant. The magnetic card was pitch black and had gold characters engraved in it. Members was written in English. The jet black gold lettered card design made it feel like something very high class. But of course I didn't have a clue what kind of card it was just from that. I unfolded the letter. Its contents were extremely brief, and only the following was written. 0715-1129. Also written was the name of a certain massive bank known throughout Japan, as well as the words Central Branch. That was all.
これは?
貸金庫のカードと鍵、そして暗証番号でした。それも普通の貸金庫ではなく、特別な顧客のみに許されているらしい不気味な貸金庫でした。
After he finished putting his affairs in order following his father's funeral, he had visited the bank. Pin and key and card. There was no doubt that something of great importance was kept there, and he had been naturally curious about what it might be. At first he hadn't known what to do. The card wasn't something he'd owned in the first place. When he mustered up his courage and showed the card to a bank clerk, he was then switched to a clerk of clearly high status, and was guided to a large vault on the 4th basement. Security on the way there was strict. The doctor had himself stored valuable items such as real estate transcripts and safe deposit boxes before. This was something on a whole different level.
私の使っている貸金庫の手続きと違い、カードと暗証番号、そして鍵を持っているならば、本人確認は行われないというシステムでした。ですが、とにかく厳重な金庫室で、こんなところに預けざるを得ない、どんな物騒なものが待ち受けているのかと。
それで？
カードをリーダーに通すと暗証番号の入力を求められました。そしてそこにある8桁の数字を入力すると認証。すごい光景でしたよ。まるで SF 映画のような世界だ。薄暗い銀色の広大な部屋にびっしりと金庫の扉が埋め尽くされているのです。
He had entered that room along with the clerk. It seems that as soon as the card was read, the vaults he had a right to were determined. So that safes he could open were lit with a green light, while those he couldn't were lit with a red one.
A11にはそれらの金庫のうちの一つを示すも、ちなみにそれ以外の金庫にもずらり20個以上はあったと思い、あるいは他の一角にももっと。いずれにせよ私の鍵は A11 にのみ、他の金庫の中身を確かめる術はありませんでしたが。
As the clerk watched, the doctor had unlocked and opened the safe. When he did, a safe drawer like a large cabinet had opened. An expensive-looking duralumin case peeked out. I was carried into a separate room where for the first time the clerk left, and he was introduced to the contents.
中身は？
現金でした。
現金？どれほど？
新札の100万円の束はちょうど厚みが1センチになると聞いたこと。それがこれだけのジュラルミンケース、多分1億はあったでしょう。 数えたわけではないからわかりません。手すら触れませんでしたから、私はすぐに直感。これは危険な金だと。
Is it normal to store a whole 100 million yen in cash in a case in a safe like that? It's much more easier to deal with if you put it into an account and turn it into numbers. When someone is unable to do that, then it's clear that there's something wrong with that cash.
私は頭が真っ白になり、すぐに関わり合ってはならないと直感しました。それで一切手をつけなかった。はい。そのまま施錠し直し、元の金庫に預けて立ち去りました。この鍵やカードも捨てようと思いましたが、何が起こるかわからない。そのため誰にも内緒で12年もの間、あれが何の金だったのか、私にも。この封筒をお借りすることはできますか？いえ、この場で見るだけにしてください。わかりました。では、ちょっと失礼、調べ物を。
I took One-chan's grimoire from the knapsack I had set down. Then I opened to the page with the paragraph Beatrice had written to One-chan and compared the handwriting on both. Oh? There was no mistake about the characteristic handwriting. The one who had sent this 100 million yen in cash was Beatrice herself. But what is it? Something's bugging me. What is it? What could it be? What the fuck are you?
そんな郵便物が確か届いた。母ちゃん、あれはどこにしまったっけな?
The same envelope and contents had been sent to Kumasawa's son, who once lived with her. So the families of the servants were... But he had been very busy in the days since, and seemed to have forgotten about it while running around all over the place. However, strange contents had apparently stayed in his memory, and he remembered as soon as Angie mentioned it to him. After a bit of a wait, his thin-lipped wife found the envelope, complaining that he always forgot where he put things right away. The modus operandi for the sender and recipient was the same as Nanjo's son's. The sender was made out to be Kumasawa's son, and the recipient was Kumasawa Shio. And the destination address was in the Okinawa Prefecture. Okinawa Prefecture, Yayama County, Yonaguni City, 1234567. Yonaguni Island was at the westernmost tip of Japan. And the lot name was the exact same sequential number that had apparently been chosen without much care. Now it was certain. This envelope was definitely sent with the goal of having it be returned to the sender. So its contents were exactly the same. A letter with the pin, the bank's main branch written on it, a magnetic card, a key with an attached number plate. An inscription on the number plate was A113, the number right after the one on the key that had been sent to Nanjo. Most likely inside the vault was the same kind of duralumin case packed with 100 million yen in cash.
I love
the contrast between the two sprites. Fucking little Angie over here, and then this just big wide guy that's like really fucking close in the foreground.
中身もよくわからんし、薄気味悪いんでずっとほったらかしにしてて、今日まですっかり忘れてたんですわ。お嬢さんはこれが何かご存知な？ひょっとしてあんたんとこにも同じものが？
どうしたんです？エンジ様。ウリュウ、頭痛？ごめん。頭が刺さってる。知ってるって何を？まさかこの封筒エンジ様のところにも
？I've remembered. A strange envelope was also sent to me 12 years ago. After losing my entire family, I was depressed. But it was a really strange thing to come in the mail, so I still had a faint memory of it. It was a strange letter which I had no memory of sending, but which had me as the sender. I forget the destination address, but the name recipient had been Ushiromiya Rudolph, my father. I remembered how disturbed I was when I got a letter I thought was from father, opened it up, and found a key and a card that I didn't really understand. I felt let down and threw it away somewhere, I think. Where did I put that envelope? I probably lost it somewhere in the chaos that followed. By now I have no way of checking its contents. However, I have a general idea. I'm sure the contents were the same. Without a doubt there had been a key, a card, and a note with a pin inside the envelope.
Beatrice, これは何のつもりよ？あいつは全ての遺族にこんなふざけた金をばらまいたというの？
Sure looks like it. Then who would be the fourth recipient? Because there's gotta be a fourth one, right? Because Nanjo's letter was sent to like the northernmost point of Japan. Kumasawa's letter was sent to like, what was it, the westernmost point? I'm guessing the letter that Angie received was sent to either the easternmost or the southernmost point. So there's gotta be a fourth one, right? But who else would have a surviving relative? Goda, maybe? Because Shannon and Kanon were orphans and really only had each other. Rosa and Maria wouldn't have anyone else. Obviously, Rudolph and Kyries went to Angie. Eva and Nidia wouldn't have anyone. I'm guessing it would have to be Goda then. Sakatara acted nervously. As I looked at his worrying face, my agitation began to cool off bit by bit.
ごめんなさい。ベアトリーチェ憎しは今あの6歳の日にもうすでにあの魔女と縁があったことに。この12年間エンジ様はずっとベアトリーチェ様の呪縛にとこれがそのまさに呪縛の証となるのかもしれません。ですがどうかしっかりそれを打ち破るための旅でもあるはずです。そうね。頭に血を上らせたって何の役にも立たないわ。冷静に考えなくちゃ。これはどういうことなの？遺族に1億円をばらまく意味は何？挑発だとでも言うの？ベアトリーチェめ。エンジェ、落ち着いて、ウリュウ。
As Sakutaro buried his head in my stomach, he urged me to stay calm. Excuse me. I took another deep breath and started thinking.
この封筒の送付はつまりベアトリーチェによる事件の計画性を裏付ける。消印は親族会議の直前。そしてわざと時間をかけて返送されてくるように仕組まれている。事件の後に届くようにしたかったということかな。うん、そうなるわ。でも少し疑問もあるの。なぜこんな不確実な方法で？不確実？ねえ、だって何日で郵便が戻ってくるかなんて事前には想像もできないじゃない。郵送先の郵便局が調査し送付先不明と判断し返送するまでの期間なんて普通。そういえばそうだね。ちゃんと到着の期日を決めてそういう郵便で出した方が。うりゅう。まあでも前日に投函したんならどんなに早く戻ってきても死者からの手紙を気取りたかったんじゃないかしら。死者からの手紙か。確かにね。あれは驚くし嫌な気持ちになるわよ。死んだ家族の名前が表に大きく書かれている郵便物が物々しい付箋付きで郵便受けに放り込まれているんだから。でも私は何か腑に落ちないわ。私だったら期日指定郵便にする。ひょっとしたら想定しない日に届くかもしれないという不安定さが私にはどうしても理解できないの。ウリュウ、でも確かにそういうのベアトらしいかなって。え、あなたベアトのことわかるの？ちょっとしかお話ししたことないけど、でもベアトならこういうことをするかなってのがなんとなくわかるの。マモンもなんとなく想像がつかない？ベアトってこういういたずら好きだよね。確かにそうかも。ベアドリージュ様なら死者からの手紙みたいな悪質ないたずらはやりかねないと思います。それだけじゃなくて絶対確実な方法じゃなくてちょっぴり不確実な方法の方をベアトリーチェは面白がるの。不確実な方法を面白がる。
I remembered Maria Onechan's diary. I had described playing with Beatrice very often. During those offens, Beata sometimes played pranks on the adult relatives with Maria. Those pranks always had a touch of witchy aesthetics, which was that they were more interesting when they were uncertain. One day, Maria Onechan and Beato decided to use a wind-up minicar she had brought for a prank. It was a popular toy at the time, and if you made the minicar back up, it would wind up the spring in the tires, and when you let go, it would race forwards. They had wound up that minicar and set it behind a milk jug. In other words, the prank was that if you lifted the milk jug, the minicar would jump forwards and surprise whoever did it. Hoping that someone would get caught in this prank, Onechan and Beato had watched the adults from the shadows for their whole tea time. They were looking forward to seeing someone get caught by it, but no one moved the trap milk jug, and the trap ended in a misfire. When Onechan had then muttered, "We should have put it somewhere where it would have definitely caught someone," Beato apparently said this: "The most interesting and thrilling traps are those where you don't know who will get caught, or even if anyone will get caught at all." It's probably true that you wouldn't get this kind of excitement from a trap that would certainly go off. Similar accounts occurred in multiple places. making it possible to guess that the witch called Beatrice had a fickle character and loved a random thrill. A fickle person is very hard to deal with. I can't spin the chessboard around to find out what that witch from 12 years ago was planning. As Ange examined these, her gaze darted from place to place. Then she suddenly showed interest in the wall. There, several framed pictures were hung. Many of them were commemorative photos from when the relatives of the Kumasawa family gathered or went somewhere to play, and Kumasawa was in several. And she still wore a smile that made it so you could almost hear her light-hearted ho-ho-ho laugh. It's part of my distant memory, but I definitely remember that she was this sort of cheerful old lady.
Kumasawa-sanは事件の直前に変わった様子はありましたか？
いや、いつも通りに見えたな。親族会議はピリピリするから辛い辛いと漏らすのはいつものことでしたし。
これは？
Among the several frames, there was one that had something other than a picture of people in it. It was a picture of an enlarged relief of a door from Western-style house of something. I couldn't see any interesting subject in particular, which actually bugged me a bit, as I wondered why anyone had gone to all the trouble of taking it. As I got closer, I realized that some characters had been written with a pen.
ああ、それはお袋の形見分けでもらってきた写真ですわ。多分例の黄金伝説に関係したやつではないかと。
魔女の碑文ですか？10トンの黄金の隠し場所を示すと噂される。熊沢さんも挑んでおられたんですね。でもこれは碑文、初めて見るものです。
There was an arch above the western-style door, and that's where the relief was. English words were engraved there, and that seemed to be what the picture was focused on. The pen writing appeared to be translation into Japanese.
この扉は1000兆分の1の確率でしか開かない。あなたは1000兆分の1の確率でしか祝福知らないわ。こんな文章、碑文にもお姉ちゃんの日記にも出てこない。
お袋の遺品の中に碑文の謎解きに挑戦してると思われる写真やノートが結構出てきたんですわ。お袋も案外そういうのが好きだったんだな。なんでも10トンの金塊が隠されてたって噂だ。そりゃお袋も夢中になるはずですわ。
In both Maria One-chan's diary and her grimoire, there was a description of the witch's epitaph. They had talked about how it was a ceremony to open the door to the Golden Land, Beatrice's resurrection ceremony, Beatrice's succession ceremony. On and on. Maybe the most interesting one was the last part, about it being a succession ceremony. According to Beatrice, if you were able to solve the witch's epitaph, you would receive not only the 10 tons of gold in the Ushiromiya family inheritance, but her own magical power and name, as well as the title of Golden Witch. Among the Ushiromiya family household at the time, the witch's epitaph was thought as a difficult quiz which the family head Kinzo had arranged for to choose his successor. But with the mariage sorcier interpretation, the questioner was Beatrice herself, and she had posed the question in part to choose her successor. There were slight discrepancies in the details of the two interpretations. Either way, its ominous contents brought to mind a bloody serial murder, and both of the message bottles drew a tale of a crime following that pattern. If I could solve the witch's epitaph now, 12 years later, I wonder if I could expose some plot made back then. I tried to solve it many times myself, but never did I have a clue what it meant. It seems that many witch hunters tried as well. I also found theories like the La Plata theory and the Enora theory in certain books. However, neither of these theories were conclusive.
他にも資料が
あると思うけど、兄弟で適当に分けたからな。誰が何を持ってるやらさっぱりです。申し訳ない。
この熊沢さんが撮影した英文だけ読むと、めったに開かれない開かずの扉という意味でも、これは屋敷のどこか光の具合から屋外みたいだけど、熊沢さんはこの中にその黄金が隠されていると睨んでたのかしら。
さあ、いずれにせよ六軒島の屋敷のどこかでお袋の預金口座には残念だが黄金を発見したと思えるようなお金は入ってませんでしたよ。さすがに見つからんかったんでしょうな。
The Golden Witch Beatrice gave 10 tons of gold to Kinzo, which meant that the witch was the true owner of the gold. Beatrice was the owner of all the vast fortune of the Ishiramiya family. The witch holding this vast wealth had massacred the humans on Rokkenjima that day, sending large amounts of money to the surviving relatives like it was a game. Like hell, it's a letter from the dead. This is a desecration of the dead. I was once again convinced. When my family died on the island that day, they didn't go to heaven. They're being trapped by the witch even now. They're being desecrated and tormented for all eternity. The last place Anjay visited was a store in the region between the housing district and the retail stores, with a signboard saying, Marufuku Sleep Shop. There lived the man who had been the boat captain of the ferry boat to Rokkenjima at the time. Oh. Even he, who had once lived as a man of the sea, had retired after contracting a serious illness, and was now taking care of at the house of his son and his son's wife.
よく覚えてる。あんた、まだこんなに小さかった。立派になったな。そして、さぞや辛かっただろう。お前さんの気持ち、よくわかるぞ。
The former boat captain was in such high spirits that you couldn't really tell why he had retired in the first place. His memory seemed clear too, and he could remember the events of more than a decade ago. Apparently even about how Anjay had been at the time. The way he chatted on was very helpful for Anjay. But at the same time, he also remembered the final family conference very well. And the fact that he remembered even details like Badler's fall madness on the boat was actually painful for her. It had been so back then as well, but even now, there was no public way to cross to Rokkenjima. It was necessary to make an individual request to an owner of a boat to make the voyage. I had been able to arrange for a boat to Rokkenjima, so if he refused me, such a voyage would probably become hopeless.
わかってる。今、あの島に行きたがる船なんぞ。今じゃロッケン島と呼ばず、古い名前の悪食島と呼ぶ者までおる。この辺りの船乗りじゃ、首を縦には振るまいな。
From the start, fishermen had feared Rokkenjima as an island of misfortune. And because of that incident 12 years ago, this fear had reached a peak. They respected the sea, feared it, and revered it. There were almost no sailors who would try to take a boat to this cursed island. Because of that, most of the witch hunters were unable to cross over to Rokkenjima, and were limited to taking a trip around the island. Ironically, this had caused the sense of mystery surrounding Rokkenjima to increase even more, which had resulted in the propagation of the bizarre witch stories they loved so much.
船は出してもらえるでしょうか？
明日だけ返してもらう約束になっとる。最近はエンジンがだいぶご機嫌斜めらしい。かっ飛ばしてやるわい。
The former boat captain promised that tomorrow he would go back to his previous job and take his boat out to Rokkenjima. Now my method of transportation to Rokkenjima is insured. This is probably all I can do on Nijima. All that's left is tomorrow. On Rokkenjima, I'll reach the final destination of a journey that stretches back 12 years.
よかったね。これで島へ行けるようになったね。そうね。船を見つけるのは難しいと聞いていたから、船長が協力的で助かったわ。エンジ様ほどではないにしても、船長にとっても12年前の事件は未だ抜けないトゲなんでしょうね。ウリュウ、船長さんも心の整理がつかなかったんだね、ずっと。そりゃそうでしょう。約束通り10月5日にあのじいさんが船を出してくれれば大勢が助かった可能性がある。ちょっと風が強いからといって船を絞らなければ。ウリュウ、そんなこと言っちゃダメだよ。船長さんもそれを今日までずっと苦しんできたはずだよ。